Friends, we are going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. Justine Green Wexner. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in the silent mode or turn it completely off. I'd also like to welcome anybody attending via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you for joining us. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Scott Gilman with Temple Sholem in Chicago.
Mourning. To mourn is the price that we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is so far too complex, too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of our spirit that Justine has given us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hour, we know that some of her light and some of her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage in the fullness of time, healing and peace. We remember Justine and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to her family. I am Rabbi Scott Gelman of Temple Sholem of Chicago. On behalf of the whole Temple Sholem clergy team, the whole Temple Sholem family, we're sending our love to this beautiful family. As mourning is a time filled with so many emotions, so many memories, those bitter and those sweet, we begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Justine's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. We begin with words from Ecclesiastes, from Kohelet. L'chol zman, there's a time for everything. When Justine did just about anything in life, she went all in, especially when it came to relationships with family and friends. She was fully present, showing each and every one of you that she loved you by being there 100% for you, asking so many questions about you. And she was living as if there was truly a time for everything. So the words from Ecclesiastes: there is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for destroying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time to refrain from embraces, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for tearing and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for war and a time for peace. For our next reading, invoking our tradition, I'll invite you to read with me the 23rd Psalm, which is in our pamphlet. Together we pray in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What's really sitting with me, with Justine in this moment, is that we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We don't run through it. We don't skip around it. We walk through the valley of the shadow of death, sitting in this moment of sadness. For someone who is just a few days short of almost turning 107, it is truly a time where we would be so ready to celebrate. And as this is a celebration of her life as well, we do also walk through that valley, mourning that we didn't get one more day, one more hour, one more minute with Justine giving us a call and wondering how we're doing, wondering how our kids are doing, how our grandkids are doing, how our family and our friends are doing. As our last scriptural passage comes from Psalms and is called Eshet Chayil, literally a woman of valor. Eshet Chayil mi yimsei, a mother of generations, a woman of valor. She is precious in the gifts that she has given to our family, her children, as it's written, but also her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren have found trust and truth in these gifts. We follow in patterns that she taught. She is robed in strength and dignity, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is always on her tongue. We benefit and learn from her wisdom. May she always be credited for the fruit of her labor and her achievements. May she live on in glory. Today we're going to hear some recollections from Justine's grandkids in two groups. First, we're going to invite up Lori Wiseman, Wendy Papier, and Jeff Starman. And then we'll invite up Nikki Eisenstein, and Adam Wexner. So Lori, Wendy, and Jeff, I invite you up.
Thank you, Rabbi, for those kind words. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us to mourn the loss, honor the legacy, and celebrate the wonderful life of our matriarch, Justine Wexner. For those of you who don't know me, I am Lori Weissman, Justine's oldest grandchild, and the eldest daughter of Justine's daughter, Lynn, and my dear recently departed dad, Marv Starman. Unlike my grandma, I am known to tout my age and my status of eldest. And I am so proud to say that I am almost 62 with a grandma who almost made it to 107. People often thought that she was my mother and my mom, Lynn, was my sister, which was nice for them. But the running joke was, because no one ever said I looked 20 years younger than my age, was that one day I would surpass both of them and people would think I was their mother or grandmother. And that was not something I looked forward to. Though I always appreciated how beautiful both my grandmother and my mother are and how people always thought they were so youthful. In addition to her amazing longevity, Nani Just, as I most affectionately have called her since toddlerhood, even though my uncle shamed me into giving her a more grown-up name when I was about 30, of NJ or Grandma, left a living legacy of 18 direct heirs, including my mom, Lynn, and Uncle Rich, 5 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren, and 8 in-law heirs, who she equally considered her family. So for those of you who like to do the math, which my grandma loved to do math, I would quiz her in math up until like a year ago, and she would always get the problems right. So that's 25 people in her family that she has left on this earth to spread her wonderful legacy and her memories. And Grandma, Nani Just, as I fondly called her, as I told you for a long time, was an epic influence and constant in my life for as long as I have memory. She and my grandfather Abe raised two incredible children, my mom Lynn and my uncle Richard, two of the most loving, fun, devoted, dependable, generous people on the face of the earth. Excuse me. I love you both more than words can say, and want to acknowledge the love and care you gave to Grandma, to Nani, over these many years, particularly Uncle Rich, who had the main job as the kid in town of coordinating all of her care and getting her on Al Roker's jelly jars twice for the last 10 years. It was an incredible job. Her long life can certainly be credited in large part to your care, Uncle Rich, and of course Beth and all the Wexners in town, and to Mom's love and care all the years in her incredible friendship as the only daughter. As far as my relationship with Nani, she was a pillar to me and a major influence in my life. She radiated a love of family, friends, food, fashion, fun, financial acumen, and forgiveness. Okay, sorry about my obsession with alliteration, but some of you know I have that problem. As a mother to my mom, Lynn, she was a wonderful example. And I know my mom had a very special relationship with her, which my mother shared with me and passed along to both myself and my siblings as a model for what a parent should be. Grandma was really more like a second mom and a friend to me, and I actually called her my Shrend. We had a special joke that we were a special category of friends, called her Shrend, because she really was very unique, and she was only 45 when I was born. So I was so fortunate to have her for so many years in my life, and I just wanted to share, to end this, two special stories about my time with Grandma and some of the fun that we had together. And the first one was, well, actually there might be three, but one of the first ones, she could take a joke and I liked to tease her, maybe in not so nice of a way. But when Wendy, Jeff, and I would go to Florida together, she was always worried that someone would get hurt and always telling us to keep your hands out of the car doors. When you would slam the door, she was like, make sure everyone's in the car.
Every single time.
Every time, okay. So Jeff sort of colluded me one time. We sort of set it up that he would scream when I slammed the door, so she would think something happened. Not very nice, I know, but we know we could get a rise out of her and she would forgive you, typically, and a good sense of humor. So I slammed the door really hard and Jeff proceeded to say, ow.
No,
What did you do? Did you scream bloody murder? Okay. He screamed bloody murder, and then she screamed bloody murder after that. And then we said, it's okay, he's fine. We sort of got a little sick kind of kidhood out of that, but that was one little thing. And then the other thing was I went to Florida many times to be with her alone and to be with my siblings with her, but went to Florida and would visit her alone. And probably when she was 95 or 96 was my last time visiting her alone in Florida. And she took me for my first time ever to an Irish pub on St. Patty's Day. My 97-year-old grandmother and me. I must have been, 40? I can't even do my own addition, but I was probably 40. I had never been to a St. Patty's Day pub to put one down, and she had me order a drink, and we made some friends there, and that was really a fun and special memory. And I know I have some pictures of that somewhere, which I have to pull out, because we met some people in green, which I made her take pictures of with me. But let it be said that she was an amazing, amazing person, and her physical presence will be sorely missed. But Grandma, you will always be with me. Your meaning, memories, lessons, and legacy will carry on, and you have been a great influence on so many. So I love you and miss you, and thank you all for being here.
So I'm Wendy Starman Papier. I'm the middle one in this trio, and Justine's granddaughter, the daughter of Lynn and Marvin, my dearly beloved past father. So, I love you, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck. A hug around the neck and a barrel and a heap, and I'm talking in my sleep about you. This verse from a popular 1950s Broadway show tune was one of my grandmother's favorites, and one she sang to us frequently when we were kids, but it was much more than just a song. This is how my amazing grandmother, Nani Just, made me feel every day of my life. Regardless of my age or hers, she always made me feel loved, cared for, and understood. She was a lifelong best friend and second mother rolled into one. Lucky me. When I was a child, Nani just showered me and my siblings with affection and attention. She prioritized spending time with us, and along with our Papa Abe, hosted us for week-long fun-filled stays at their homes in Chicago and Florida, where they indulged us with games, toys, delicious homemade meals, and with outings to favorite restaurants, movies, parks, ice capades, theaters, aquariums, and many other adventures that made me happy as a kid could be. Throughout high school, college, and adult years, Nani's love and attention never wavered, not even for a second. She routinely expressed great interest in me, in my work, my feelings, my siblings, my sons, Evan and Max, and husband Larry, whom she adored. Nani was always on deck to dote on us, lend an ear, express her love, and celebrate our accomplishments, even during this year, at the extraordinary age of almost 107 years old. Nani's love and care for me and other family and friends was boundless. Forevermore, I'll miss our special times and our heart-to-heart conversations. Words simply can't do justice. Just know I love you a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck, a hug around the neck, and a barrel and a heap, and I'm talking in my sleep, Nani Just, about you, about you.
So my sisters have often accused me of having everything the easiest. I was the youngest, so they paved the way. I was the only and undisputed favorite grandson for about 19 years of Justine Wexner, and I got every possible inch out of that I could. She was a gracious, doting, loving grandmother. I am Jeff Starman, and for many years I thought I would be the last of the grandchildren until my Wexner cousins happily joined the fray. But my sisters have covered so much, I thought the easiest thing for me to do would just be share a couple anecdotes and two little thoughts, which I shared yesterday. The first is that Nani Just and Papa Abe together as a unit were probably the favorite people in our lives early on. We used to hear they were coming to visit, and we would line up in the driveway waiting for them to arrive, generally in Papa Abe's white Buick or very large white vehicle, and meet them at the driveway to a happy Papa Abe and a sobbing Nani Just, sobbing with joy that she was there to see her grandchildren. We would then be showered with gifts, toys, love, and then about a week later, you did have to put up with PA smoking all over the place, but that was just something you had to deal with. About a week later, they would leave, which also was Nani Just sobbing in the driveway once again. And this time everyone would cry because we all felt so bad, and she would just watch as she drove away, crying the whole way. But she was a tremendous influence, mainly because she taught us that we had this loving person, and that was it. It was love all the time. I'm like a parent that could, and she never chastised you. At least when you were young, you never got in trouble. You just, if you were bad, you got toys or peanut M&Ms. How can life get better than that? The other thing remarkable about Nani Just was she never complained, almost ever, except about one thing. There's only one complaint Nani Just ever made to me that I recall, and that was that my dad forced her daughter to live in Detroit, Michigan. She never forgave that one thing. Besides that, she had a phenomenal relationship with my father. So I do want to tell, when we visited her about 3 months ago, she asked about my dad, and which was pretty amazing because, you know, she's 107 and she's dealing with all her things, but she asked about how my dad was, and you could not lie to Nani Just. I couldn't fake it. So I told her, I said, he's not doing well. And she shook her head, and then she asked to see a picture, and I showed her a picture, and she was truly, moved and realized that someone was, so she was still that aware and it's still thinking about other people, not herself. At the meantime, every time you left her, she'd say, "I'm probably not going to see you again. It was good you stopped by." And that was my grandma. So I find her to be, and I've always wanted to be, and she's still here with us because, again, she was, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest example of unconditional love and happiness with me. I know everyone had different relationships, but she was phenomenal sense of humor. You could prank her and she would never hold it against you. And I know she is in a much better place, and she had an incredible run. So in honor of my Papa Abe and me, I'm going to one last time say, good night, Joss! Love you, Nine.
All right. Hey, everybody. I wrote prepared remarks, but before I read them, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Adam Wexner, son of Beth and Richard. Grandma Justine was my grandma. And I guess also before I get into my prepared remarks, I sort of thought my dad would say something. But I think everyone in this room knows how much my grandma loved my father. Sort of shocks me, but he was just an amazing son. I think we could all be so lucky that our children could, care for us the way that my father cared for my grandma. And also want to correct one thing that Laura said. I think it was my wife Ashley that got Grandma Justine on Smuckers, not my dad. So I thought that was just want to correct that. Okay. Yeah, just making sure. Grandma was an incredible person. This won't sound like how I mean it to, but for what it felt like my entire life, Grandma was old. Not because she acted it, and certainly not because she looked it, but the opposite. People were always stunned just how old she was, and yet how amazing she looked and how sharp her mind was. Grandma was a small lady, but she was tough. Dad and I used to say she was a Sherman tank, an unstoppable force. In fact, she once got hit by a car, not while driving. Grandma herself got hit by a car walking in a parking lot, and she was completely fine. I told this story yesterday to the rabbi and our family, but I actually found video footage to confirm my memory. I once asked her what she credits her longevity to, and Grandma told me she eats refrigerated bananas. In the video, my dad then asked my grandma, sort of suspiciously, why she keeps bananas in the fridge, and Grandma deadpanned at him, because that's the way I like it. I know Grandma lived a full life before I was born, but the woman I knew and loved so much lived her entire life for her family. Her family is what gave her the most joy and what she cared about more than anything. This is a sad day, to be sure, but Grandma is very much worth celebrating. And that idea that family is the thing that someone can derive so much value and life from is also worth celebrating. Jeff said this yesterday with the rabbi, and I spoke to a little bit to it just now, but it struck a chord with me. Grandma always loved me and loved all of us so much. There was never any question or doubt about that. But I'll tell you, these past years since Ashley and I had our 3 boys, I can't express how little Grandma wanted to do with me. She really just wanted to be with, see, or hear about Lenny, Lou, and Sid. Every time I called, it went something like, "Hi, Grandma, it's Adam. It's Adam." Then she would go, when are you and Ashley bringing the kids to see me? And that is sort of the point I'm trying to make. At the end of the day, Grandma lived completely for her family, and she just wanted more family and more time with family. So looking around this room, let's all celebrate that Grandma accomplished for 107 years that which I think was most important to her and is now survived by an incredible legacy in all of us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nikki, Adam's older sister. My dad told all of us we have 1 minute, and clearly I'm the only one that followed the rules. In thinking about how I was going to talk today or what I was going to say, I found it the most fitting to write my grandma a letter, because she would always leave voicemails and eventually text messages that read like letters. There'd be an opening, a body, and the best part was when she would sign off, "Love you, love, Grandma." So, hi, Grandma. It's Tuesday, June 11th. Lee had surgery yesterday, but don't worry, he's okay. His doctor even said he can go back to work on Friday. Avery and Cameron are doing well. Both had great school years and have wonderful friends. Avery continues to love dance, and Cameron has found a passion for softball. And Casey is sort of growing out of her puppy stage. Because I know how much you care about all of them, my friends and their families are also doing really well and enjoying the start of summer. Grandma, I feel so fortunate to have had you present at so many milestones in my life. My bat mitzvah, graduations, my wedding, when Avery and Cameron were born, to name a few. And while not a major milestone, but they were just as significant, all of the holidays, family dinners, our phone calls, and the many one-on-one visits we shared all had such an important impact on my life. You were truly the matriarch of our family and meant so much to not only me, but to all of the family and friends that are important to me. Thank you for always caring and for your genuine interest in what was always going on in my life. I love you and will miss you. Love, Mickey.
Lori, Wendy, Jeff, Nikki, Adam, thank you. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your reflections. One through line from the five of you is that she was always worried about you, and she kept you going, but truly, you all kept her going. Every time you showed up to see her, every time you took time to come to Chicago, every time you took time to go down to see Grandma, every time Richard, you, as I heard, left tennis a little early to go take care of your mom, every time you all spent time with her, you were the ones keeping her alive, keeping her going, keeping her strong. And so we all thank you. Thank you for keeping her as such a blessing in this world and keeping her shining strong. Born on June 16th, 1917, here in Chicago, to Isadore and Dora, she was, of course, close with her brothers. She was the middle child of Alan and Lou, her older and younger brothers. And as we can imagine, family was important. Family was center of everything. One of the recollections I heard about was that family was so important and really making sure that those who were striving to do well in the world got the support that they needed, that the whole family stuck behind Alan, her older brother, becoming a doctor. She was, when she was young, a winner of the spelling bee in we believe it was middle school. And as the family tells me, she was extremely proud of winning that spelling bee so early on, and everybody knew about it because she was not only a great speller, but she was quick to correct you on your spelling and your grammar, even calling you after an interview that's airing and telling you, "I don't believe you said that word, that's not a word." This, of course, complemented her perfect penmanship. She went to Thule High School and junior college, and it was a little fuzzy as to when she met Abe, but we're pretty sure it was at a high school dance where he was a really great dancer, Abe was, and they loved to dance together. Well, soon the family grew, with Lynn in 1939, Richard in 45. They raised the two of you on the South Shore before moving in the late 1950s. One of the moments that really stuck out to me was a story that Lynn, you shared with me. As Justine was in an automobile accident when she was maybe 19 or 20, and so Justine didn't drive for quite some time in her life, even though her husband was in the automobile business for his whole life. She didn't drive until Lynn, it was one of your birthdays, and she asked you what you wanted, and you said, "I would like you, Mom, to be able to drive." And so she learned. That's all it took, was family asking. And she would, of course, do anything for family. Justine was a stay-at-home mother who, as we've heard, was just always there for you. Lynn, you shared she was such a good friend that all of my friends, as you shared, loved to be with her as well. She was everyone's second mother. And Lori, you reflected that she was my friend too, even spanning generations in that way. You shared you would go to the bar together, but she always felt young. And especially always looked young. I really wanted to highlight that moment that you shared, that when you would go out, people would think like, "Oh, she's your mother. She must be your mother." And mistaking her, she in fact being your grandmother. And she was always worried about you all. She always wanted to know what was going on, how your life was, how your kids were, how your grandkids were, how your friends were. She wanted to know everything and everyone who you were supporting and who was supporting you, and how they were doing in life. While Richard, you reflect, this might have been difficult, how much she asked about you, especially as a kid. You came very much to appreciate this, both Richard and Lynn, in your age. Justine loved to take care of you, but especially with food. Richard especially remembered fried liver and then salmon patties, but she was especially famous for her creamed spinach. She was not only a good cook working in recipes, but she was an innovator in her cooking. She always wanted to know where you were going to dinner. And when you told her, we're not going somewhere, we're staying in, well, what are you making? She always wanted to know what you were having to make sure that you were sustained, make sure that you were taken care of. She wanted to know that you were eating well. Of course, she would push food right in front of you and then say maybe not so nice things about you and your body, but she made sure that you ate well. She wanted you to keep eating, and even wanted to make sure if you said, "No, I'm done," she was going to put even a little bit more in front of you, always forcing a little bit more. And especially when she found out a food that you liked, she made sure to always have it on hand and stuff it in your face, as Adam, you shared with me. Whether she was grandma, grandma teen, Nani, all these names, she was yours. She was yours and one-on-one when she was with you. There was no one else who existed in the world when you were with her. She was focused on you. And she rarely talked about herself. Some of these questions asking the family about, tell me a little bit more about her early life. We're not sure. It just occurred to me. She never told me because she was so worried about you. There wasn't time for her to talk about herself because she lived through you. She lived through her family. She was so invested in you. And she modeled what it meant to put family first. You never had to question that there was unconditional love. As we shared, she cried at the sight of you coming and cried at the sight of you leaving. She especially loved to spoil her grandkids and her great-grandkids. Candy stores and just about all the food that she could fit into your body, she just pushed it in there. She was truly like a friend, especially as was shared with her sense of humor, as Jeff shared. She loved to laugh, even at herself. She was extremely social. She loved surrounding herself with good people, both here in Chicago and Florida, where they would winter, where her and Abe would winter. And when she was in Florida, I love this story, she was always the driver, even for her younger friends. Until she was 97 years old, she was driving her friends around. And when family would come and visit, she would always tell you, do not share how old I am. They don't know, and they're not going to know. She did not really acknowledge how old she was, except for, being on the Smucker's jar twice. But she was always asking about her friends, asking about her friends' lives and her friends' kids and family, always deeply interested in you as well. Always well-read and up on the news. Even in these last few weeks of her life, she was watching the news. And of course, because she couldn't hear well anymore, she was reading the closed captions so carefully. She wanted to remain sharp. She wanted to remain with it. And while there are so many to appreciate who took care of Justine in these past weeks, months, and years, there's a special appreciation that we wanted to share about Marv Starman, who really put a great deal of effort into taking care of her as well. Marv, of course, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. Even when Justine's love was ill, even in throes of dementia, she would always visit Abe. She was with him every day. Even in the last moments, he remembered her. He knew who was by her side. Even if he couldn't remember just about anyone else, he remembered his love, Justine. I asked the family for some final lessons. What are the takeaways? What are the things that in a year are still going to be reminding you every day of our beloved Justine? I heard about how when someone walks in your house, you're going to make sure that they are fed, and they are fed well. We heard of dedication of family and always asking about family. One of those lessons is her goodbyes, and always a long goodbye. Nikki, you shared, it was a goodbye in her apartment, and then it was a goodbye at the elevator bank, and then it was a goodbye downstairs, and then it was a goodbye at the car, and then you would occasionally drive back around to see if they were still there waiting and waving, and they were, even though they assumed you were down the street. Having those long and loving goodbyes is one of those beautiful lessons. Richard, the lesson I'm really sitting with is how much of a strong unit your whole family is. From Detroit to Chicago and on. You are a strong family because of the values that Justine instilled within each and every one of you. So if there is anything to take, so many things from her memory, but if there is one, is to instill in our family, instill within our friend group, instill within those who we love, truly how much we love them and how much they matter and how much we care about them, showing them in everything we do, because they are the ones who are going to hug our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids on behalf of us when we go. Now going to rise for the words of El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim shochen במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קרושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת Justine Green Wexner שהלכה לעולמה בעל ההרים יסתירך בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace with the holy and the pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace. As together we say, Amen.
This does conclude the service here in the chapel. The family will be receiving condolence calls at the Wexner residence, 500 West Superior in Chicago. And that'll be immediately following the interment today. That address is on your folders. If you didn't receive one when you entered the building, please get one as you leave. We will continue the burial on the grounds of the cemetery, so we will follow behind the hearse and procession to the graveside. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, what we're going to do is have her casket go first, and then the pallbearers follow behind. Pallbearers are Lori Starman, Doug Starman, Jeff Starman, Helen Starman, Adam Wexner, Nikki Eisenstein, Wendy Papier, Lee Eisenstein, and serving as honorary pallbearers will be Beth Wexner, Cameron Eisenstein, Lenny Wexner, Sloan Weissman, Alec Weissman, Jacob Starman, and Evan Papier. We'll continue standing as the family and the rabbi are escorted from the chapel.